Okay, when I was first asked to do a Street Fighter versus Mortal Kombat, I actually made a list of like 13 fights that came right off the top of my head. Now the weird thing is, when it comes to the Street Fighter characters, I'm gonna put them at everything that's not Marvel versus, because like the Marvel versus Capcom things, the Shingo Hadoukens that Ken and Ryu would have, and all sorts of massive, almost like Dragon Ball Z-esque sort of energy projectiles and blasts and full screen attacks. They're not going to have those. Because that would just, it'd be kind of unfair unless they were going to be fighting someone like a Shang Tsung to give them these just, blow a hole in the side of a mountain sort of attacks. So they're going to be more of the standard Street Fighter sort of style. Now from the Mortal Kombat side, none of them have really had anything super over the top in the way of attacks, so I'll keep them pretty well as they are. Now, my background in these sorts of games, I was never a huge Mortal Kombat fan. I was more of definitely a Street Fighter fan. I really loved the Street Fighter Alpha series because they also included the Final Fight characters. So, from that aspect, the Mortal Kombat side will, since it's just the Mortal Kombat series itself, where on the Street Fighter side you'll have Street Fighter and the Street Fighter Alpha characters. So for the first fight, I thought, who in the world am I going to go with? You have to go with Ryu from the Street Fighter side because he is, of course, one of the first characters. Ryu and Ken were from Fighting Street. If you're player 1 Ryu, if you're player 2 you were Ken. And of course, they're probably two of the more iconic characters. That's why most of the SNK games had, again, characters who were almost identical to Ken and Ryu. You look at like Iori and Kyo, or even Terry and Andy Bogard. We're still pretty close to the Ken and Ryu mold. So I definitely know I had to go with Ryu, or Ryu, depending on how you want to pronounce it. And for the other side, I was thinking, okay, who was probably the most popular Mortal Kombat character? And of course, it comes down to your first two palette swap ninjas. Do you go Sub-Zero or Scorpion? While Scorpion is a really impressive character, let's be honest, Sub-Zero brought in the rating system that we see on video games, not because he tore someone's head off as a finisher. He's also had his own singles game. So it makes me think that Sub-Zero is probably a little more popular character than Scorpion. So therefore, the first fight we're going to have Ryu and Sub-Zero. Second fight, of course, will have to be Ken and Scorpion. So as always, this is the basic 9 criteria that I have. Intelligence, how smart is the person? Fighting ability. This is going to be more on the side of, when it comes to their overall battle style, which one will give them more of a slight advantage? Strength, speed, durability. This is kind of, how well do you take a beating and recover from it? And vulnerability, we'll say this is more like your resistance to damage, I'll say more or less. Energy projection is your raw energy projection. Versatility is, whatever sort of different skills you bring from your energy side, your special moves and whatnot. And of course, then there's the X factor. That's whatever is not covered in the previous 9 pieces. So we got Ryu and Sub-Zero. So we'll go first with intelligence. Sub-Zero, very, very old ninja. Well, I should say very, very highly trained ninja. Depending on the story, some stories have him being relatively immortal because he's an ice-based character. Others have said, previous characters have died, but there's always been a Sub-Zero. It's kind of like almost like it's the Phantom. It's like it's a gene. It's a lineage. It's a heritage. Where Ryu on the other side, trained by, I want to say it was Goken. He was trained by Goken. Some people have him trained by Shenlong. So he was more or less kind of like the pseudo-orphan sort of background story, depending again on the story that you read. His father may or may not be Shin Akuma or Shin Gokai, depending on, again, the version that you read. So he got this really great lineage. So comes the idea of intelligence. I decided to give the edge to Ryu, since he's going to have a much broader, much more wider acclimate, where Sub-Zero himself is pretty much going to be focused on a ninja, things related to ninja, and of course the idea is revenge. Fighting ability. Initially when Ryu started, he was very much identical to Ken. And then when they began to split off, Ryu's style is very much a direct, strong style. You know, he doesn't have that much in the way of, you know, feints or any sort of, you know, real speed to him. He is very much a direct, strong, heavy hitter. On the other side, you have Sub-Zero. So Sub-Zero with his more, you know, there's more subtleties to it. There's a lot more fluidity to it. And there's more speed. So on one side, you've got Ryu, who's almost like straight knockout shots, where Sub-Zero is going to have to do a little bit more to get an opponent to come more towards him, and then use, you know, feints and other things around him to kind of give him a slight edge. Since Ryu is very much of a direct forward fighter, I think that Sub-Zero is going to have a little bit more of an edge when it comes to the fighting abilities. Just based on the way that he tends to fight. He's not a big strong guy, so he's going to have to use his opponent's momentum and strength against them. Straight into strength. Ryu. Larger, much stronger. Speed. Sub-Zero. Durability. You know, how well do you picture these guys coming back from injuries? Again, depending on your background on him, Sub-Zero actually can heal himself pretty quick using his ice. He almost has kind of like a X-Men sort of Iceman sort of ability to him. How well can they take a beating? You know, Ryu has taken some tremendous amount of abuse, and he's still standing. You know, for the invincible vulnerability, I definitely have to give it to Ryu, because he can take an absolute beating before you can get him down. Once you get him down, he's kind of done. Where with Sub-Zero, he can take a lot of damage. It'll show on him, but he can come back from it faster. We're not on energy projectiles. Again, this is raw overall energy. I have to give this to Ryu. You know, his Hadokens, whether it's blue or it's red, are very, very powerful. You know, he has knockdown shots. He also has, you know, distance abilities that allow him to put a lot of hurt at a distance. So you're probably saying, but for Sub-Zero, you've got his energy blast, you've got ice blast and all that. And they're nice setups. They're nice, you know, holds, they're nice slowdowns. But Ryu's got the ability to just knock you flat down with almost any sort of projectile he's got. Versatility side. This one, of course, is going to have to go to Sub-Zero. The ability to make energy clones of himself, shoot energy at shoot beams at the ground, and make, you know, ice slicks, shoot them up in the air and have ice cascade down. He definitely does have a lot more going on when it comes to, you know, the variable directions you can do with ice. Now it comes down to the last thing, of course, which is the X factor. I have to give that to Ryu. The reason being that knowing that part of Ryu's heritage comes from either Akuma or Gokai, depending on, you know, the version that you read, he does have the ability to go to, I think it's referred as the Dark Hadu, which allows him to take who he currently is, who's a very powerful individual, and slightly twist to the dark side, which is why it's things like evil Ryu, where he is a lot more powerful, and he almost hits a level pretty close to Akuma. And Akuma is very, very powerful. I mean, Akuma has actually gotten to the point where he's beaten, you know, multiple Street Fighters at the same time. He also has, I think in one story, I think they had him, one of the storylines, I want to say he beat the master of Ken and Ryu, and then challenged them both to fight at the exact same time, and only barely lost because Ryu was able to, you know, channel the dark side of his energy and was able to finally, you know, defeat Akuma. So in the battle of Sub-Zero versus Ryu is going to take this. It's going to be a close fight and it's going to be hard fought. But at the end of the day, Ryu will be the one victorious.